Bonjour. Thank you all for coming today. Thank you very much. I recognize a lot of familiar faces that we've seen over the past few days at the Artist Villa with Rani. Thank you so much for coming today for this debate, for this real debate, as they call it at the NFC. We have quite an amazing list of speakers today with us. Jean-Michel Pailhon, Jaclyn Lavy, Rani Jabban, and Sebastien Montabonel. Jean-Michel Pailhon is a former executive in the financial industry. He then, for Euronext and a few other companies, he then worked in the fintech space before starting at Ledger 6 years ago. He worked 6-7 years for them at the end as chief of staff, and he just left a few years ago. As a lot of you know, he's also a collector in the space. Passionate about art, and he just started a new venture, Grail Capital. Jaclyn Lavy from Sotheby, she is helping Sotheby with auctions on NFTs in particular. Sebastien Montabonel, who is coming from traditional art space. Sebastien helped build collections for high net worth foundations, governments, and is getting into the rabbit hole with us. And Rani Jabban, Managing Director of Arab Bank Switzerland. Arab Bank Switzerland is a Swiss private bank and was in the crypto space very early on. It's been in the crypto space since 2019. And Arab Bank Switzerland is also very much into art. They've been sponsoring artists for decades now. And they've launched an NFT collection that you could admire downstairs yesterday and still today. And they've also launched an NFT art prize. Thank you all for joining us for this panel. So most of you probably have seen a real debate. I haven't, because I was crazy busy at the Artist Villa. But I will re-explain the way it works for those of you who didn't see one. The way it works is that you should have cards. Do you have cards? They told me you would have cards. Or maybe you don't have cards. Okay. I guess it probably changed. Thank you, Lina. I will use the hands then. So because you don't have cards, please use your hands. You're supposed to vote. So I'm supposed to ask you a question, and you vote at the beginning of the session. And then we'll see who disagrees, who agrees with whatever question I ask you. Then we ask one participant from the audience to come on stage with us to debate with the speakers. No pressure. And at the end, we ask again the same question. So I suggest the one who agree raise their hand, and the one who disagree do not raise their hand. The question is an easy one, or not, we'll see. The first question is digital art a safe financial investment in the long term? So if you agree, you raise your hand. Or is it a risky bet, which means you don't raise your hand? So who agrees on the fact that art is a safe... Well, that's not a lot of people, actually. Bruno, I see. OK. Oh, Omar as well. Cool. OK. Cool. So who wants to come on stage with us to debate with us? Yeah, come. So Omar Zobles, yes, please take a seat. Omar, an amazing and talented photographer based in New York from Puerto Rico, am I correct? Omar is well known for a series of photographs. He's a street photographer, but he's also well known for a series of photographs of dancers in the street of New York and in other countries. Do we have somebody else that I need to onboard on stage? Okay, the brief is changing in the middle of the debate. Join us, please. Omar is well known for, if we can have a chair maybe, a series of photographs of dancers in the street of New York. Jean-Michel is collecting Omar, and I think Rani is collecting Omar as well. Do I need to onboard another person? No, thank you, Maximilian, for making it easier. Maybe if we can start with the first question for you guys. The first question is, do you think the majority of tomorrow's grails will be Gen art pieces? Who wants to take the question? Jaclyn, do you want to take the question, the first one?
So the question is, Is art a good investment, or is it the Grail's question?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm asking the question directly. You're making a good point. There's been a lot of discussions about generative art lately, in particular with your recent auction at Sotheby's. We've seen over the past few years that generative art pieces are usually the ones that are selling higher, at a much faster pace than crypto art pieces or even photography. So what do you think when you look at Grail pieces, what we consider Grail, as like the top pieces in the digital space? Do you think most of them will be generative art pieces in the future? Or do you think there's still space for crypto art, glitch, photography, any other type of digital art?
Got it. So for those who aren't aware, again, Jaclyn from Sotheby's, we're actually selling the Grail Capital collection. We have a June single owner sale live right now, and all of the works, we have 37 lots in the auction. They're all generative works, and I definitely think that there's a lot of momentum towards generative art. I think it was very interesting for us because we had the opportunity now to really form proper editorials and understand the history of generative art, and it's a movement that started back in the 50s and 60s. So I think it's a very easy historical narrative to build up to, and so it's easier to convey the story of the work, and it's not just a trend and it's not just a fad, so it's like a real movement. And I think if you saw, we sold 7 works in the Contemporary Day sale, and those 7 works went for upwards of close to $2.5 million. And so there's clearly a very strong demand and desire to, buy really top quality works that are generative. And I think that if you go to our website right now, we have an amazing timeline that kind of walks you through the story of generative art, and then we really pay an homage to art blocks who help these generative artists mint their works on chain. So we have like the pre-blockchain era of generative art and then the post-blockchain era of generative art. And so I obviously think that there's obviously a lot of momentum in the market. I think we're going to continue to see strong desire and demand for generative works. It's very complex, very interesting to engage with, and so I'm looking forward to seeing how the generative market continues to evolve and grow, and the new levels of complexities that artists are adding. There's they could add a beat, they could we have figurative styles that are emerging, like the goose, for example, that we're selling. That was pure chance, and so it's so interesting, all of the different outputs that can derive from generative works. I don't know if
I know, Jean-Michel, you organized an event recently in Paris on generative art. You were lucky to interview somebody from Bright Moment following their amazing drop in Tokyo. Do you have an opinion on the question?
Yes, obviously. I think that it is definitely, if you look at the gen art segment, as it's probably the largest right now in the digital art business, both from a value perspective and both from a volume perspective as well. As you just said. I think, because the question is this the Grails, are the majority of tomorrow's Grails generative art? I hope not, even though I like gen art a lot, and I believe they are actually already culturally significant. They are entering museums and the greatest collections of obviously digital collectors, but probably at some point a traditional art collector. Obviously, for me, they have already made a very good job on that, and they are there to stay, and therefore it's not a fad, as you said. It's it's a known fact for me, actually. It's not a question. I just hope that other segments of the digital art market will gain traction, so that in 5-10 years from now, we have gen art for sure, but we have other movements as well that are well represented, both in museums and in collections.
I think to that point, when someone's putting together their art portfolio, they're looking at Impressionist, they're looking at Contemporary, they're looking at all different eras of art and all different movements. And I spoke to a mentor of mine. She was head of the Contemporary Art Department at Sotheby's from 1973 to 1980. And she said, we were selling Basquiat and Warhol, and no one wanted to buy these works back in the day. And her advice to me was, look at who the disruptors are and kind of ignore how people are reacting in that moment. But if you could spot a disruption in whatever market it is. So that's why I don't necessarily just think it's just going to be generative art. There's so many pockets of digital art, and it's so interesting to see how these pockets evolve. So if you pay attention to the disruptions and you kind of figure out who is at the top, and then make like a hierarchy of the derivatives of that, I think that's a very good way to spot something that might, from a historical point of view, continue to have relevance down the line.
Thank you very much. Our next question is about blue chips. And do you think blue chips are a better investment, or would you rather go for emerging artists? And maybe Sebastien, you can answer first about, or you don't want to answer first?
Which one? Sorry, which one are we?
I'm sorry, I'm doing the questions. To be fair, I'm not doing the order we agreed on. I'm switching the order.
The blue chip one.
That was supposed to be the first question. Thank you so much, Sebastien.
You're welcome, sorry. Just quickly I come from a different world, from the traditional art world. So when it comes to investment, it's a tricky one as a director of collection. Since I'm not regulated, I'm not allowed to give financial advice. However, we can share a few tricks. Overall, museum quality works seems to do much better than shitty works. It's one of the rules, and sounds weird, but a lot of people buy terrible works. So this on the long term is definitely not a good strategy. Then when it comes to price, the price is directly related to the risk. So the cheaper the work is, the higher your risk. The more expensive it is, the safer the investment is. So it's there. So is that a good investment? It just depends your tolerance for risk. So when you go for a blue chip, so let's say a Picasso, and you're gonna spend 50 million, it's safe in a way that the way that you want to sell it, it's pretty easily. You have a worldwide market for it, but are you gonna double up or triple up your money? No. If you go to the emerging artists, so you start and then you go, okay, this is cheap, but the chance that only maybe 1% out of them will make it to the next stage. So in terms of a strategy, if you want to go at the cheap end on the market, you need to buy quite a lot. And thinking at the end, 1% will pay for the entire collection. So when you go to mid-career artists, it's probably not as risky, and you already know who's gonna more or less make it or not. There is always someone who's gonna get caught for doing crazy things, but overall it's the safest. And if you are in the 100 to 500,000 pounds market, there it's on the long term, not on the short term, you can do 10, 15 times your money. So that's what we are talking about, but the time frame is very difficult to take into account. So if you are running a fund, it's very difficult because you're limited by time. And this makes it extremely complicated. If you see it as a collector and you have all the time in the world, then it's honey all the way. So like we say in the art world, you get rich with what you don't sell, and that's the idea. So you wait, and the people who've been collecting for 2 or 3 generations today are sitting on collection worth $500 million, and it's quite common. And every generation look at what the parents done, checking what it's not good, cut it up. Sometimes some of the work will say they have peaked and they're worth 8, 9 millions, and you sell them and you use that money to reinvest in younger generation. And you keep doing this like a garden every time you cut the bad branches. So this blue chip is a good investment. I'm not sure, but it's definitely safe.
Thank you, Sebastien. I think Omar wanted to say something, and after I'm very curious to have Rani's opinion as well, if that's okay.
Okay, I would help. I'll start. Working? Yeah. I completely agree. It's about risk-reward. So I come from the financial market. It's about weighing your risk, your time horizon, or what reward you're looking for. So ideally, I would guess it will be a core of blue chips and integrating risky assets that are cheaper and mid-range assets. So it depends what's your strategy, what's your time frame, and what's your risk appetite. So that's my opinion on that.
I think coming from the perspective of an artist that's been in the space rather early, it's very interesting because what we call blue chip in this space, you know, like in your example, coming from a traditional art space, this space is rather new, and I would dare to say that a lot of the places that have been occupied by blue chip artists in the space are actually very emerging in many other platforms. And I've also seen the case of many, particularly in the photography space, of artists that are very well established outside of the NFT space, and when they come into the NFT space, they're suddenly unknown. I've seen National Geographic artists that have dropped pieces, and they have been collected by museums worldwide, and then they come to the NFT space, it's like crickets. That is the point that I wanted to make is, in that sense, I think there's a lot of education that still needs to be done in the market as to the quality of art that is being presented, because talking about, as you said, and this is, you know, trying to be as respectful as I can, there's a lot of shitty art right now that is being called blue chip just because of the factor of popularity that in the NFT space, it's seen as a safe bet, but on the long term, especially in terms of substance, I'm not sure if it will survive. So I think in the NFT space right now, there's still that factor of uncertainty in that sense.
Thank you very much, Omar.
Just to add to your point, about 80% of bidders were new to Sotheby's when we started releasing digital art. So yeah, it's an entire new audience.
And just one more thing, in terms of quick investment and probably quick money, rather than blue chip, you have another type of artworks that when you work at auction, you know, it's called trophy artwork. And you have out there a lot of collectors that are after trophy artwork. So it's the iconic of iconic, and very limited amount of supply, everybody wants it, and there it's probably your best bet. The only problem is the access. But if you have access, it's a good start.
That's the goose right now. It's our premium trophy lot.
Thank you. Omar, thank you very much. I think we'll ask another question and then we'll have somebody else on stage. If you wanted to come earlier, so if you want to switch with Omar, if that's okay. Thank you very much. When you have the mic, if you want to introduce yourself in a minute or two, that would be amazing, because I knew Omar, but I don't know you. The next question is about one-on-one and editions. There's a lot of discussion on whether it's better to buy only one-on-one, or whether it's better to have a mix on one-on-one and editions. What do you think is a better investment? Sorry, Sebastien, Jaclyn, what is your opinion on the topic?
So I think, you know, at Sotheby's, we really take the curatorial approach and try to frame the narrative of the story. And I think, you know, especially if we're focusing on generative art, each work is unique technically. So I think it really is a bit of a toss-up. It's really where your passion lies and what you have the appetite for. I think both, you know, we've seen one-of-ones do really well. We've seen the editions do really well. I think in the market right now, there's like the whole community aspect that's formed around the editions as well. So you also gain access to that community. But I do believe with the one-of-ones, there is still that level of a different type of community, because you have your fellow collectors that you could kind of identify online and, you know, form bonds with. But I think it really is about your taste and your desires and what you are going to hold and look back on and still like down the line, less about what you think will do better from our perspective, because we really focus on the curation.
Well, the world I come from, unique, it's a sales technique. So, and that's what they say, it's the easiest way to close a sale. You know, when you work in a gallery, it's very different than working at the auctions, because you have no deadline. So you need to use different trick to close the sale. Otherwise, your collector is going to think about it until you don't know when. So saying it's unique, it helps you to close the sale, and if it's not you, it's a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity. However, edition, if you think in a smart way. And the traditional art way, it's edition, we're talking edition of 5, not an edition of 1,000, because it's a different world. It's the world of collectibles. But edition of 5, it's probably your best bet. And there again, you need to look at who have the other. So if you have 5, give me an example. The first one is at MoMA. The second one is at Pompidou. The third one is at Tate. The fourth one is at the Steiglicht. There is one left for the private market. If you get this one, you get the Holy Grail. And that's the fastest way to get your work validated. And this work will get published in institutional books and shown around again and again. And this is how you generate value very quickly. And that's how you end up with a trophy artwork. So sometimes edition could be a very good way to get something that's been validated by institution in the past very quickly.
That's very interesting. Thank you. Would you like to add something?
Thank you very much, and just grateful to be up on the panel and with so many minds learning so much. I'm York. I'm a collector in this space for about 2 years. I've been in the crypto world for about 5 now, and just in terms of editions versus one-on-one, I think it really links back to your first question in terms of would generative art, photography be the grails of the future? Because if we look at what's current or immediately past, the future of accessibility, we see just an immense amount of people drawn here today, specifically for this panel. So there's interest within this community, but as this community enlarges, I think that's going to bring in a tremendous amount of new tastes and new desires in terms of what wants to be done with the art. So if you're buying it because you like it, which is how I started in this space, not really speculative, that was for other forms of collectibles, but in terms of communing with an aesthetic experience, I think that is going to be a way that the editions in a Web3 sense can bring people to understand the history of curation and leveraging their portfolio as well as their art collection as an asset class unto himself. So generationally, it might be at a faster pace than my children and my grandchildren inheriting this collection because of what's being produced and the turnaround time of that appreciation. And yet the same philosophies, templates can be applied in a faster pace. So I think as collectors who might not be as familiar with either a legacy art world or with the notions of wanting to come in beyond anything other than personal pleasure or passion, or if one is a creator themselves and bridging their identities of being a collector, this is something that will allow them to look towards the future with a sense of posterity. And the sense of an edition gives that access just a little bit more, maybe not the one holy grail that's left out of 5, but it allows the teaching of folks who might not understand why an art is being appreciated or what the difference is between good or bad. It's just their personal taste. And when it comes to understanding when to prune their garden so that they can reinvest, it's not done in a way that mirrors the speculation of a very hyped market, but it can be done in a way that is prudent and can be done with a longer term vision than is inherent in even a lot of the other exhibits we're seeing in this event. The long-term vision that's built into the art world itself is something that can give a lasting and a staying power to the Web3 space. Thank you very much.
Thank you, of course. Thank you very much. If that's okay, I'll ask another member of the audience to join us for the next question. I see a lot of familiar faces, a lot of major collectors. Benoit, you want to join us on stage? Now that you just... Benoit was waving at me, and now he's ending up on stage. Benoit Couty, ladies and gentlemen, a major art collector in the NFT space, who created the MoCA, the Museum of Crypto Art,
yes.
Together with Tweetian within the audience as well. Benoit is a major player in the space. The last question that we have for the panel is about all-time high, and we've seen a lot of very high prices in 2021. So the question is about, do you think that NFT prices will surpass those 2021 all-time highs? And if they do, which NFTs will drive those prices? Who wants to answer first? Benoit, go, please.
Yeah, I think so. Yes, I think. I mean, everyone says it, but we are still early. We are still early. There's still a very small number of collectors, right? So there will be more. And currently, what I feel is the collectors of traditional art, they are not yet into it, and they will be into it. They will come. It's just a matter of knowledge and education, and knowledge keeps spreading. So once you know it, you're into it, and it's just a matter of time when new collectors will understand and they will get into it. So.
Thank you.
I completely agree. I think it's a matter of time we will reach the all-time highs again. It's about, because there are newcomers. I mean, us as an institution, you got museums, you got plenty of new actors coming into this space. So it will create momentum. It will take time, and I'm not saying it's going to happen in 1 or 2 months, maybe a year or two. There are also funds, there are curators, SPVs, there are collective investments also that are entering the market. So it will probably be a game changer here.
Thank you, Rani. Jean-Michel?
Yes, the short answer is yes. And the long answer is that I'm trying to put myself in 5-10 years from now. And because I've been a collector before of street art and photography before NFT, I also try to understand at one point of the market, we'll have a conversion of the market price between traditional art and digital art, so that because we have this next wave of collectors that will enter the market from the traditional art, because they are used to pay a certain price for certain type of artworks. And you've got some kind of threshold, you've got some kind of tiers, and you've got above 10 million or even above 50 million, let's say. You've got this kind of 10 to 50 million, you've got 1 to 10 million, and you've got this 100K up to 1 million, which is something I learned, when I started collecting street art, and Banksy was original, like around 40, 50K. And a great collector told me this story about, as soon as you will see him going above 100K, he will very quickly catch up with 1 million. And then as soon as he's above 1 million, you will probably see him going much, much higher. And that's actually exactly what happened, even though it took a bit of years, it was not instinct. And so I tend to believe that it will be the same, and therefore the kind of market price of traditional art will eventually apply to digital art. Obviously not all. But it means that those who are the grails, they will reach probably amazing prices. That probably that if you say today the kind of price objective I have for certain artworks, most of the people will believe I'm crazy.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's one thing where there's parallels, and when I look there's one thing, and Rani can expand on this. I think a good investment, you need to think. You need a very good entry in, the access to the market, and then your exit, right? How do you exit if you are there to make a profit? And at the moment, the way I understand it, and maybe I'm wrong, but the access in the NFT world, it's okay. It's you can. You have access to the artists very easily via, Twitter Space or Discord. I think when the market's going to mature, things going to change. The access will change. And I think we're going to see a lot of parallel with the traditional art world. And that's going to be very difficult, because the best way to get the access, it's when you don't sell the artwork. And you're going to be... from the moment you're going to sell, then you're going to be seen as a flipper. And then nobody is going to open your door to buy the best work. So I think at the moment, for the next 2-3 years, you're probably in the best position to make some stills. But I think it's going to change. But maybe I'm wrong.
There will be the royalty stuff, Don't forget that in NFT, you've got the royalty with the secondary transaction that make actually artists relatively okay if you sell their art on secondary, because actually they get a benefit from that, which is not exactly of the same amount with the droit de suite in the traditional art. And actually myself, because I'm a collector, besides being an investor, and I'm a long holder, so that means that I'm very rarely sell what I buy in the long term. Actually, it's good for the artists because I kind of value somehow their artwork, because I collect them. But at the same time, they don't get any direct financial benefits because I don't sell, and then they don't get the royalty fee. And so in the long term, I think that as soon as you will have some artists who basically have some secondary sell, they will not necessarily be seen as flipper, they will just be seen as someone who provide liquidity to the market, and that will benefit the market, but also the artist, I believe.
That's true that the NFT space has created major changes compared to the traditional world, where you got this arbitrage opportunities between editions and one-on-one. You've got this liquidity that is offered, the secondary market, and the fact that artists are earning on secondary sale. It changes a lot of things. I mean, also for us, if we're talking about the topic, is it an asset and investment class? For us, and I take the example for our collection, it's actually in my trading portfolio because it's sort of automatically a financial asset in our custody. So that's the paradox of it. And for our clients, when they buy NFTs, it's part of the financial statement. So I mean, these little things make changes, and obviously the time. The vision of time and the effective time in this space is completely different from legacy or traditional art. It goes much quicker. I mean, much quicker.
Of course.
I have a funny story about this. Two funny stories. I will not say names, but two artists had very different approach on this. One, while his price was climbing, every week would send me a message, Benoit, when are you selling? When are you selling? Because of the royalty and because he was trying to reach the all-time high. And I was part of this scheme, you know. And there's another artist, I sold his piece, and next time I meet him, he say, Benoit, why did you sell the piece? Come on, why did you sell it? So, you know, you have those two things that happen, and that's part of the thing. You need to understand the artist, what they're feeling.
But I think, I mean, like, it depends also who sells, right? So if I understood, Benoit, you are an incredible collector. I think if you sell and people look at what you have in the collection and what you sell, it can send also a bad message for the artist, thinking, maybe I thought he was really good, maybe not so much. And that's why, and yesterday when we did the talk with Tyler, it puts a lot of pressure. At the beginning, not so much, but at the end, people look at the market, and any sign of it going up or down, people get overly interpreted. And my bet in the future is that market's going to change, and you're going to have gatekeepers in between, like in the traditional art world, and the market will have to be rethought. So. But maybe I'm wrong. That's probably the guess.
Just for the audience, the talk he's referring to is yesterday we were lucky enough to have a conversation between Tyler Hobbs and Sebastien here, which was very, very interesting. That's what he was referring to.
I had to buy back the piece that I sold. So.
I would like to do two things because we're early and we have 10 more minutes. I would like to do what I was asked to do, which is to ask you again the same question than at the beginning and then see if you change your mind or not. And then I would like to open the floor to questions from the audience because we are lucky enough to have a lot of people in the room, a lot of major collectors and artists. And it would be a bit of a shame not to make the most of our panel today, given the quality of the speakers we have. So if I ask you again the same question, then the one I asked you at the beginning to see if you change your mind, please raise your hand if you agree and do not raise your hand if you disagree. The question was, is digital art a safe financial investment? And then you need to raise your hand if you agree, or you need to not raise your... Oh, that's actually a tiny bit more people. My God, a lot of you are going to turn into digits. Should we open maybe the room for questions for the next 10 minutes? Is there anybody in the room who has questions for any of the panelists or for all of them? And we might want to have a mic, otherwise I'll give my mic. Yes. Come. Maybe it's easier. Thank you, Abdoulaye.
Hi, everyone. I have a question. It's about the anonymous artists versus the docs artists. So in the traditional world, I'm assuming there's more docs people than anonymous. And in the crypto world, it's like maybe 50-50. And how does it work in terms of marketing the work that you buy as a collector if the artist is anonymous? So you cannot, I mean, you can do interviews, but the artist will change the voice and it might face something different. It works for big artists like Pac because he's OG, but for newer artists, I don't think that being anonymous would be like an advantage to grow, in terms of selling, etc. So, yeah.
If you could introduce yourself, because I know you, I'm lucky to know you, but not everybody knows you in the room. In a couple of minutes, if you can say who you are as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
So my name is Abdoulaye Barry. So I'm a 3D artist in the NFT space for about 2 years now, and I do especially 101s. Yeah.
Who wants to take the question?
I can start. Again, if I look at the street art, for instance, obviously the most famous street artist in the world is Banksy, and he's undoxed. And actually, that's a hunt to know who he is. And at the same time, you've got Invader, which in the first place was unknown. You couldn't know who he was, apart if you were very close to him. And now it's like Daft Punk. It's not official. Now it's almost official. You can find his name and stuff. And actually, the trajectory in price, so the economic value and the cultural value of both, somehow has been parallel. Obviously, Banksy started from a very highest price, and therefore his career was probably like, in terms of price right now, an original of Banksy is probably above 2 or 3 million minimum, maybe more. And Invader, you still have an original of around 200K, 300K something, so there is still a bit of this. For the NFT and digital art, I think that obviously it's kind of a new art segment, and therefore it kind of captures certain things that we experienced in the past, both the street art and the music with Daft Punk. And I tend to believe that actually being anonymous for an artist can be, depending on why you are anonymous, can be both an advantage and a drawback. So it really depends why you are anonymous again. Sometimes it's logical because what they are doing might be against the law. So for instance, I know that Patrick Armadon, who is based in London, in LA, sorry, but he's done a couple of things that put him at risk. If he's going, for instance, in Hong Kong, he could go to jail, basically. And obviously, not being anonymous, but not knowing exactly who he is might help or not. Voilà, I think that's the first answer, but I guess probably other people have.
Just for the audience, for those who don't know him, Jean-Michel was referring to an artwork Patrick did recently in Hong Kong, and this specific piece was referring to the riots in Hong Kong, so the pro-democracy riot, and because of that, Patrick is now forbidden to enter the Hong Kong territory, and if he was to enter the Hong Kong territory, well, he would be in serious trouble.
I think it's back to storytelling. So why are you anonymous? What's the story behind it? It obviously adds mystery. It's about creating a story around your artwork and your persona. So it's about that. So
100% agree with that. I think it's how you present yourself and the messages that you're sending.
Yeah, I guess there's two stories about this. You have an artist, and it's been for centuries, that works under dictatorship. And there is a very good reason of why they want to be anonymous. And then there's the branding aspect of the thing. And branding in the art world and in NFT world, it's a key thing. Everything is branding, and that would be true for curators, it's true for everyone. It's a way of transferring knowledge and build a character, persona, which is highly expected when you're an artist. So it's, yeah. But I guess it works both ways.
Thank you. Should we take maybe one or a couple of last questions from the audience, if we have the last one? Yes, of course. Lord Triffington, please come on stage. I'll give you my mic. Come. Lord Triffington. a major collector in the space. Very glad that you're asking a question.
Okay, thank you very much. So do you envision a convergence of prices and value between the traditional art and digital art when it's created by the same artist? Because at the moment we see a very big gap. And if so, how long do you think that will take?
Yes.
Because I've done that bet.
Of course.
So with the island, we are commissioning traditional artists and to see how their practice will evolve in, on the on-chain medium. So rather than looking at the NFT, we believe that on-chain is a medium. So then when they're going to look at the artist's career, especially for artists that works across all the medium, from video, neon, performance, and then that they explore the on-chain, we think at some point, we don't know when, there will be a correlation. So they will be seen as a work of the artist, and they will come together. So I don't know for sure, but that's the bet that we've done, with my colleagues. So yeah.
I also think a lot of the traditional artists are just unfamiliar names to a lot of the collectors that are in the digital space right now. Like Pace Gallery, for example, did a drop with like Tara Donovan and Loie Hollowell, and these are names that people in the traditional space would be more familiar with. And so I do think there's potential for, like, as people from the traditional art world kind of segue in, they're probably going to go lean towards names that are a little bit more familiar, but it could also go the other way too, where it's like they're going to try and understand who are the experts in this digital medium rather than who kind of from the traditional world segued in. But I think there are a lot of traditional artists who have been experimenting, and it's very interesting to see what they've been putting out. So, yeah.
And I forgot to say also, there's one thing, and this we didn't know, and I'm going to send a bit of a scoop. So we did the thing, and one of the things that was really important for us when we've done this project is to see if traditional collectors will be ready to buy, on-chain artworks, because the artist was a traditional artist. And so we've done 63 editions, and with a museum, and one traditional collector bought the entire collection, the museum collection, for $500,000, and he doesn't have a wallet, so we're working with the family office to see how we're gonna, set up the wallet and things like this. And we were surprised. We were hoping, and we had no ideas. And of course, maybe it will be the only on-chain works they will ever buy. We don't know, but we thought for us that was a significant marker, $500,000. It matters to us, and. So we think in the future, I mean, we are not there, we don't have a bridge yet, but we have the beginning of a bridge.
I think Rani would be the logic. Yeah, if I may, indeed, Rani's job is obviously to offer services to high net worth individual, and I think a lot of your clients are already traditional art collectors, and maybe you want to comment on their reaction when we organize for them events and surround them with NFTs.
It's exactly what happened, is that they discovered NFTs, they discovered digital art, I don't like the word particularly, but they discovered it during a panel that we organized in last October, and immediately they started buying NFTs. And for them it was a seamless operation, because they had an account with us, we bought the work, the pieces for them, and it's in the statement, so it's in the wallet. And they don't have an idea if it's a wallet, what's my public address, we manage everything for them. So, and that's the idea that we had, since we had the custody of digital assets, of cryptos in particular, and Bitcoin, is that we can easily adapt the service for digital art.
And just to add on, a lot of the artists now, for example, Tyler Hobbs made it so you can claim a physical print of the work and he would sign it. And so actually in the Grail's collection that we have at auction right now, that none of the prints had been claimed yet. So it's like a good opportunity to see, and I don't think there's been a direct correlation yet in terms of price of the digital with the work claimed versus unclaimed. I think it's still very early to see that, but I think it's a great opportunity to actually get the work. And we've been at Sotheby's now working with a print shop. So when we do exhibitions, we're printing all like the highest resolution of the works and showing the different ways that clients are going to be able to actually put these in their homes. So it's getting there, you know, the space is progressing. And I think what's important to collectors as well is being able to kind of have an emotional connection to the art rather than just having it in a wallet that they could just trade and have there's no relationship to it. So the more we develop screens and figure out like holograms and all these different interesting ways to live with the art, I think will help propel the space.
I think we may have time for one very, very last question. If we do have one. Yes, please, of course, come join us on stage. I'll give you my mic. Thank you. If you can introduce yourself in a minute and then ask your question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, I'm Mike. My question is, how do you value art, looking at it in crypto or in fiat? Because most collections you see when the cryptocurrencies rise in price, the price of the art drops.
So I could tell you when we're doing our pricing at auctions, we typically do the value in crypto, and then the day it goes live, we'll look at what the pricing is in US dollars.
Right now, the directory market is in ETH, mostly, so it's crypto, because 99% of the targeted collectors are crypto owners. We start to see, obviously, with auction house like Sotheby's and Trustees, the price in ETH and the price in USD, and it kind of actually go in the direction of my statement that I made previously, which is at some point prices will convert, and the psychological price in USD with those segments of 100K, 1 million, 10 million, etc. in USD will converge with the price in ETH, obviously at the price of ETH that I don't know exactly in the next future. Yeah, and I think that will happen this way. But right now, that's definitely the ETH price that drove the kind of you know, if you bought something at 50 ETH, even though the ETH was at 3K 1 year and a half ago, for instance, and right now it's at 55 ETH, even though the price has gone down a bit, you probably believe that you did a good investment because you increase your ETH, which is, by the way I react. You know, I count in ETH. I don't count in fiat currencies, but because I'm coming from crypto. So I think that most of the collectors actually are thinking this way.
And the sale that I was talking about with my traditional collector, I had no idea what ETH was, but so we closed it in dollars.
Yeah, in terms of consistency, we obviously value it in USD for the clients, but we do the acquisition in ETH. And for example, for the collection, we bought everything in ETH, and I actually used the ETH that I already had as a position 2 years ago. So it's actually not taking a loss on my ETH, but changing it into art. So it's magic.
But maybe there's a final question for you, which is about the correlation between the price in ETH. What's the impact of the ETH going down or up, you know, on the art market? We've seen, for instance, the ETH price going down significantly last year, and it had an impact on some collection and not on others. Maybe Jean-Michel, do you want to comment on that?
Well, I remember indeed that after all the mess that we had on the market in May last year with you know, Luna and all those things, obviously the price of ETH went down up to 1K USD, if not mistaken. And I remember that at this point, I was kind of not happy for the market, but as a collector, I was happy, and I bought a couple of Squiggle at 6 or 7 ETH, which is like, you know, I think a good long-term investment, obviously. But coming to your question, more at the macro level, I think that if you look at the top 5 or 10% of the market of what we call the blue chip, I think actually their price, obviously in USD, actually has been relatively stable over the course of the past 12 months. I think that my partner at Grail Capital, Tim Salikoff, actually had done this report about the price over the past 12 months of the biggest collection, like the CryptoPunks and the Fidenza and the Squiggle and stuff. And I think that he arrived to the conclusion that the price have been going up a little bit in USD, actually. So that was quite a good investment as well, even though we went through a bad market for the crypto.
Yeah, that's, I think, an interesting point that lots of people don't realize yet, that a lot of the art pieces, at least the biggest one, are not correlated anymore to the ETH price.
I will
Jaclyn?
say, if any of you are in New York and want to see the Grails exhibition, it's from the 10th to the 15th of June. So please message me on Twitter, Jaclyn Lavy, or on Instagram, and happy to walk you around, show you some of the works, and get your opinions on, display and all of that, so we can continue to improve in the space.
Thank you. I would like to thank all of you, Jean-Michel, Jaclyn, Sebastien, and Rani, as well as the audience. Thank you very much to all of you. Have a nice day.